the president also punished some of his appointees who had failed to declare their assets by a particular date. He had given them 3 months to declare their assets. So those who failed, he fined them 4 months' salary and said that they should go and see no more. Indeed, the president is saying that if by close of tomorrow, 7th May 2025, an appointee has not declared their assets fully as prescribed by law, they will forfeit their position automatically. Now the question is, who is the custodian of the assets declared? Will there be a publication for which somebody like myself can go and check? Is there some sort of public record facility available for which we can say, okay, as of 8:32 on 6th May 2025, X number of appointees are declared their assets? Those are some of the questions we ask. And even in the build-up to this, there's been all kinds of discussions around the politics. And I'll give you 2 examples. So on the government side, MP for Guma Central has been accusing the Attorney General of many things. Indeed, he made a number of posts accusing the Attorney General of going to collect some money from somebody. Attorney General in a press conference tried to address this and sort of try to clarify. The MP himself sort of backtracked and retracted some of the things he had posted, and also claimed that some of the things were not postings of his own doing. Some people are asking whether the AG's position is tenable with the level of accusation coming from a member of parliament, whether he ought to have that matter investigated to be cleared. We'll deal with that as well. And there are all kinds of claims on the MPP side as well, where the BA chairman of the party is in a war of words with the former flag bearer over who was giving what and who can talk and who is a rich man and who is a poor man. So it's been a very, very busy week. Now let's speak to the Director of Policy and Programs at the CDD-Ghana, Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, just to put everything in context for us, starting off, of course, with the latest that happened with the president's appointees. Doc, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Bernard, and good morning to your listeners.
So just at the cusp of Mohammed's 120 days, he releases a code of conduct for his appointees, enjoins them to live by it, and then sanctions those who fail to declare their assets within the same day. It's almost like he's hurrying up to clear some things before the 120 days. Put it in context for us. What do you make of the actions from yesterday, particularly as his 120 days in office approaches tomorrow?
Thank you very much. For me, I think it's very significant. I mean, for somebody that really has been pushing for integrity in public life and accountability. The asset declaration regime has always been the cornerstone for the prevention of corruption. But over the years, the regime itself has come under a lot of scrutiny because it's weak compared to other regimes across the world. And there has been a certain resistance from the political class in wanting to comply with it. So if you recall, in the past, and I have to commend the Fourth Estate for this, because I remember last year, or maybe 2023, they did also reveal a number of appointees under the Kufuor government who had not complied with the asset declaration laws. And really not much happened to a lot of them. So it's important they've gone again this year, to keep President Mahama on his toes when he declared that he wanted everybody to declare by March 31st. And of course, some have missed the deadline and deciding to basically, fine some of them and then giving the, estimate why they lose their job. And really that should be the standard, because the law is very clear, the constitution is very clear that you have to declare before you take office. And somehow the statute, which is at 550, decided, or Parliament decided to modify or revise the constitution, which of course will be unconstitutional, by making it 6 months that you can declare within 6 months. So I think the president is trying to use the constitutional standard instead of the the statute standard, which I believe is also unconstitutional, to ensure that we take the asset declaration
All right.
regime.
Kojo, on asset declaration, I think the main question people ask is, what is the use of declaring your assets if we as citizens, media, civil society cannot know what is in that envelope that you have sent to the Auditor General? So explain to me why it is important to declare your assets even though the assets so declared are not made public.
Sure. I mean, I think it's so that's why it's weak, compared because it doesn't have the publication function that a lot of asset declaration regimes have. It doesn't have a clear verification.
Hello. We have a challenge. Kojo, we'll call him back shortly. I was trying to get a point around the fact that the declared assets are not made known, which he believes is a weakness. Although, in thinking about it right now, Sky, imagine if a politician is accused of corruption in the previous administration and is accused of acquiring properties with state funds. And if this politician had declared his assets upon assumption of office, could he ask the court to release the assets he declared to show that those were assets he had before he took office? And that would have been a good alibi, correct?
Well,
maybe let me finish with Kojo and come there. So Kojo, you're saying that the fact that, of course, the assets declared are not made public is a weakness. But I just thought whilst you went off that, imagine if like I am a politician who just left office and I've been accused of corruption and buying state stuff with state money. If I declared my assets at the beginning of taking office, maybe if I'm sent to court, I could ask the judge to bring out my assets declared form to compare the things they claim I've bought. If I had those things before I took over, then clearly I am. It's an alibi, is it not?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's, I mean, that argument has been made, several times why there has to be some publication of the asset, the submissions that are, even if it's partial, and the fact that they needs to verify that what you are saying is accurate. So those aspects of the regime, as part of the reforms that, even if you look at the NDC manifesto and even previous manifestos of other political parties, there's been this effort to try to reform the asset disclosure regime. If you remember, the Code of Conduct for Public Office Holders, which is actually an IMF requirement, is really what is supposed to address this gap in the law. But even without that, and even if we were enforcing the asset disclosure under the current regime, it still allows us, even when issues come up and people are accused of corruption, that we still can go and check with what it is that they put in the asset disclosure. There are ways in which you can still verify whether or not the person acquired something before they entered office. You are doing an investigation. So I always mentioned the Adapa matter, when it came up, that if we had gone for an asset declaration, we can still compare whether or not the money that she owed was legitimate, that she had acquired it, before the incident happened or whatever. But if people are not even complying, in the sense that they are not even submitting their returns for asset disclosure, then you can't even have that opportunity. So I think even the minimum, if we're even doing the minimum, it will go a long way to addressing some of the corruption problems that we face.
So for the president to basically tell his appointees that if you don't declare your assets, you are sacked, it is highly symbolic in our Fourth Republic, you believe?
Oh, I think I don't, without any equivocation, because in the past when people have not even declared, nothing happened to them. And then, I mean, if you recall, the former Chief Justice Enning, the Shrine matter, when he was, it was concluded that he had not declared his assets. Later on, he did. The Shraj basically, just allowed him to declare. There wasn't any sanction. Meanwhile, the Constitution is very clear in terms of the importance of the asset declaration, because if you don't declare anything that is found later on to be inconsistent with your declaration, it's confiscated to the state, right? And Mr. Domlevo has made this point clear that for him, once the Constitution says you have to declare before you enter office, if you don't declare, then basically your appointment is void, and you should lose your appointment. And that's what I think the standard that the president is trying to enforce. And he's absolutely correct, because there has to be a consequence. If the whole point is that is the appointment that you want, then these are the rules of public ethics. These are the rules of public integrity, accountability. If you don't follow it, you don't benefit, right? Even though I don't think working in the public service is necessarily some sort of a benefit or something that you should accrue to you. But the way people, clamor for these things, if that is what is your aim, then you should also make sure you submit to the rules to make sure that our public interest and our public funds are protected.
All right. A couple of people have said they believe that he should have sacked them without even fining them, because if you read the law carefully, it's a condition precedent to your appointment, and most of the people were appointed definitely before the beginning of March. So if by 31st March you've not filed, even in fining them 4 months' salary, it's almost like it's lenient. I mean, I do understand that this is the first time a president is publicly insisting on it, but the sticklers for the letter of the law will say maybe you should have gone further by even sacking them. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I would take what he has offered. I mean, because as I said, where I'm coming from is zero. So I'll take what he has offered. Particularly also that literally he's giving them, I mean, how many days? May 7th is
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So basically he's giving them, just a couple of days to rectify it, so that he's not even sort of being lax in insisting that you have to declare. So whoever has not even started the process, then they are very hot. They need to complete it, because the sanction then is automatic. You lose your appointment. The point is that what we need to get is more transparency. So I think the fourth estate did indicate which appointees have not submitted yet, so that we watch it carefully. I had even expected that the Auditor General should be publishing periodically who has submitted and who has not. That's just a matter of public information, because the timelines are very, very clear, so that it also incentivizes people to do the right thing. And we have to remember, it's not just the politicians that we have to be concerned about, because the Act 550 is very, very elaborate in terms of everybody that is supposed to submit, including anybody whose income is at the emoluments is at the level of a director of the civil service. So anybody whose income falls under that is supposed to declare. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have not paid heed to this requirement. But that is something that we also have to enforce to make sure that there's sort of widespread adherence to.
So let me get this clear. You're saying that all categories of public officers, it's not just Article 71, but
no.
all categories of public officers have to declare their assets?
So if you read at 550, and there's a long list. So there's a long list, tax officials, the local government officials. There's a whole, I will share that with you so that you see what I'm talking about. And then there is an omnibus clause which says that everybody whose income is equivalent to the director at the civil service, whose income is equivalent to or above a director of a civil service, is also required to declare. And it could be so many different people. So that is itself work that we have to do to make sure that the entire process. Everybody that is eligible to declare is declared, because the whole idea is that anybody that has a certain level of power and authority within the state has to declare, so that we can ensure that they are not abusing their position for private gain. So it's not just politicians. Yes, the president will focus on, but even that, when I've had an opportunity to speak to the presidential advisor on corruption, Professor Dodu, that that process has to go beyond just political appointees, so that we look at the entire regime seriously to make sure that people are complying with the provisions of the Constitution.
All right, Kojo, let's go ahead with the code of conduct. So again, he launches a code of conduct yesterday, which he enjoins his appointees to live by. I guess the only minus is that we haven't seen the content yet. Have you seen it? And how rigorous is it?
No, actually, I haven't. And I'm also trying to get a sense of what the code of conduct would cover. But I have my own ideas what it should cover. But when we see it, we will be able to tell whether it addresses the problems that are necessary.
Yeah, because I think it should be made a matter of public knowledge, so that even in the private sector, because Kojo, you know that the issue of corruption is not just a politician problem or a public sector problem. It's actually a prevalent national canker. So I believe that if the code is made public, we can say the public officers is the minimum standard, and then we in the private sector can also build upon it to develop our own codes. And I feel like media needs to start using it in our discourse to guide behavior, so that the issue of corruption can be dealt with from a behavioral and cultural perspective beyond just the punitive side.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, because first of all, Ghanaians seem to have a certain a challenge when it comes to holding people accountable through imprisonment. So they don't like sanctions that imprison people. So if we are squeamish about that, then we should really invest in prevention. We shouldn't do the crime, so that we could all, before people go and call their pastors and their imams and whatever and so on, just don't do the crime. And with that, public ethics is really where the problem is. We don't have a strong codification of public ethics. When I talk about public ethics, it's things like conflict of interest, influence peddling, gift giving, nepotism, all of those behavioral part of the things where it's very difficult to establish intention. Very difficult to establish if I'm doing something that favors my uncles, brothers, niece, or whatever it is. Because it doesn't come to me directly, it's very difficult to establish if I got a private gain. But it could be for my extended family. It could be for my friend. It could be that I am trying to get a benefit from a contract in the future. So the way people deal with these kinds of public ethics issues is that it's almost strict liability. Don't do it. Or you put a cap. So, okay, you can't give the gift more than 100 cedis. That's all you can get. We don't want a situation where you go and give 1 million cedis and you have to explain why you gave 1 million cedis the last time, you get 20 cedis the last time. So just, it's a cap. If it goes above this, then you have violated the protocol, and there's sanctions for it. So that is what we have to address, because every corruption problem we have in this country starts with a public ethics problem. And that's where we have to address it. So a lot of the things that the president has to do, particularly with a code for his appointees, has to be around public ethics, which we are now trying to reform. As I said, the Code of Conduct for Public Office Holders, the COPO bill, is one way to address it. Some of the issues around the constitutional review process under, Article 284, we can also address it that way. But currently, the code has to address those things, and also the PFM public financial management law requirements that public officers have to comply with. So yeah, I think that for me that's very important that it has to be made public so that we can all basically hold public officers accountable.
Okay.
Yeah, so that I'm really looking forward to that being published as well.
Wonderful. So on the asset declaration and the code of conduct, we are scoring the president high. Let's deal with a controversial matter. The processes occasioned by petitions for the CJ's removal, the subsequent suspension, a court case challenging the way the matter has been handled, and a minority or MPP-led protest against all of that's gone on. Have you been able to reflect on all of that? And do you have any concerns about the process? And where does the demonstration leave us?
No, thank you very much. I mean, I think we cannot underestimate what this. So the applications are serious, and everybody has to look at it very carefully. I mean, I don't know if you saw the piece I did when this matter started. That for us, and it's not just me, but my center, that the roots of this problem is governance. It's the governance arrangements around the discretion of the Chief Justice, and basically some of the reform areas that we've not addressed, particularly the capping of justices. So for me, the caution was that if we wanted to address this problem, that's where we have to look at. But of course, the process was triggered. And so far, I have seen nothing wrong with what the president has done. He's followed the law. The Council of State has made its advice and decisions on the suspension, and the president has followed it. You cannot ignore, of course, all the statements and pronouncements that have been made by members of his party and even his government, declaring a lack of trust in the judiciary and all of those things, the run-up into the elections and all of that. You cannot ignore that. So we have all stated that if you want to address the issue of whether one side somebody says, oh, it's political persecution, the other side somebody says, no, it's due process, then the only thing you can do when you are going through the process is to enhance the transparency of the process. So can the petition be disclosed so that people know what the case is against the Chief Justice? The Supreme Court in the J2 did say that even disclosing that would undermine the in-camera process. So don't disclose it. Fine. But if the committee finishes this process, can the findings of the committee be put out in the public? Because in the Salotose one, it was not. At the end, you got leaked reports and so on and so forth. But given the confusion and the politicization of the process, you can only secure the rule of law and the administration of justice through enhanced transparency, so that people can actually also make their conclusions. Because otherwise, then you are left with the partisans. One person saying, no, it's due process. The other person saying it's political persecution. And in between that, there is no other information for you to really assess the process because it's in camera. So that's where we've come to. And for me, the other part which can also lead us to a constitutional crisis is the litigation that is before the Supreme Court, challenging the process. And the Bar Association have also made their point that they think there's some procedural problem. I disagree with them because Article 296B basically have been decided by the Supreme Court in France versus Attorney General. And we have always said that that decision was wrongly decided. But the only way you can fix that is to either go for a review or, again, through the constitutional review process, we can make it clear what that particular provision was trying to do. Now, the problem why you can get into a constitutional crisis is that basically you are asking the Supreme Court, that's the Chief Justice, to make a determination on a process that it is seeking to remove the Chief Judge. Already, two of the members of the Supreme Court have been drafted into the committee that is supposed to do the full investigation. It creates all kinds of complex conflict of interest scenario. And it's not anybody's fault. Article 2 is very clear that you can go and challenge any kind of process or action that is inconsistent with the Constitution. And it did not exclude any process. But in enacting it, in implementing it, it's obvious, anybody looking at it, that you are going to have all kinds of conflict of interest situations in a case like this. So for me, you cannot resolve any of these issues through law alone. And that's why governance is important. That's why, you want cool heads. You want, some discussions about how do we preserve the integrity of the judiciary after all this process is done. Because if you don't take whatever outcome that you get and whatever Supreme Court that you end up with, including bringing in new judges and so on, then people are going to make a decision that, oh, okay, you brought this person, so these are MPP judges. You brought this, so these are NDC judges. And at the end, the problem that we are trying to fix have become worsened. So they are not just purely, and after most of the time when I listen to this course, there's so much emphasis on legality, but a lot of the issues and the way we have to approach it has to go beyond law. And that's why I mentioned the transparency issues at the level of the public who are caught in between these accusations, and it's difficult to tell because the process is supposed to be in camera. And then, more far-reaching problems that at the end of any of this process, what judiciary are you going to be left with? And remember, the judiciary is not just the Supreme Court, but everything that happens at the Supreme Court seems to then permeate in terms of perceptions.
Yeah, but Kojo, I guess we can say we are already there in terms of the politicization, because if you look at what has happened in the build-up on the NDC side, some officials of the NDC have been heard on air speaking in terms of their intentions to remove the CJ. That's been well documented. And of course, the minority and now the MPP and other parties have opposed this. So in a sense, the appointment of the 7 new justices is already politicized. And now if the CJ gets removed, if at the whole process, whatever the 5-member committee does, we are now fully in politics. I'm not even sure it's law anymore, unless you think, even though there's a lot of noise around, the process can still be legally sacrosanct.
Oh, as for the process, I don't have a problem with the legality, but the legality will not resolve the issues of perception, the issues of perceptions of bias of the Supreme Court and so on, and the confidence that people have. You think about it. If you are an investor and you are looking at the judicial system in Ghana, right, and you are hearing all the things that are going on and so on and so forth, you'll be worried about the independence or not of the judiciary. And this is very important to all the political risk assessments that investors make. So, and that you can look at, trust in the judiciary. There are all kinds of measures that tell you that we have a problem and we have to try and fix it. Now, yes, as for the politicization, including even the demonstration that went on yesterday, that tells you where the parties are. And of course, the parties, have their own party interests and so on and so forth. And they are pushing this. But for the state and the people, the point is that we want a judiciary that can ensure trust in the rule of law. Now, if what is happening, unfortunately, I don't think will deliver that for us. And in the past, when these crises have come up, like we had in the last 2024, at the end of 2024, between the Supreme Court and Parliament, the Speaker, which also sort of led to a crisis because there were things that we had not addressed in the Constitution. It took a lot of behind-the-scenes efforts to try and resolve it. And I think we have to do the same, unfortunately, because there is really, at the end, no winner to this process if it continues the way it's continuing. Particularly that the Bar Association is also taking a certain position around it, and it's made it even more difficult. So for me, yes, as for the legal process, as I said, I don't see anything wrong that the president has done necessarily but there are real issues with the standards for removing a chief justice, the whole removal process, and it's not just the chief justice, but all independent governance institutions, processes that have been put in place. It has shown that we have issues, but that I expect the CRC process to help address. But in the short term, we need to find a conclusion around this that ensures that there is still trust in the independence of the judiciary. One group that I've not heard come out on this really is, for me, the judges themselves, the magistrates association, and so on and so forth. And this is unusual, and often they don't speak around these things, but it is their profession. And as I said, the Supreme Court is not the entire judiciary, but everybody gets tainted if that process is not handled well. And I think they should have an emergency meeting to also discuss this process. And behind the scenes, there has to be a lot of effort to try to find, even as the legal process is going on, what kinds of accommodation that can be had to address, some of the challenges that we are, right, the governance challenges that we are facing.
Finally, let me deal with an issue that has come up and sort of, I won't say it has died down, but last week it was a major issue. Over the weekend it was still a big issue. It probably just got overtaken by yesterday's demonstration. So a member of parliament in Goma Central, Kwame Obiasari, known as A+, made some serious accusations against the Attorney General in terms of claiming that he had gone to receive some money to be used to, quote-unquote, bribe people in parliament. Of course, the Attorney General denies this in a press conference and essentially said that he did receive money, but the money was for something else. All right. Then now the MP has sort of subsequently come to issue some retraction, saying that his tone and the choice of words was not advisable. We are not sure whether that means that he's taking back everything he said in relation to the Attorney General, because Attorney General in public said he did take money, but it was for campaign. It opens a lot of issues, because here we are with a situation where people are being investigated and possibly prosecuted for wrongdoing. No mean a person that an MP comes out to accuse a colleague MP, a high-profile MP, of some wrongdoing. He doesn't provide any evidence. Now, the Attorney General, in seeking to respond, seems to say, well, I did collect money, but it was for something else. Now, it's pretty untidy, because even if the money was for something else, does not open the Pandora's box about campaign financing and who the money was taken from and what it was meant for. Does this require some sort of investigation? Should the fact that the MP has retracted end the matter, or from a good governance perspective, particularly because the government's anti-corruption charge, you can say, is being led by the AG. So he's the one talking about people who have misused state funds. They are investigating them and all of that. In the heat of that, to get an MP accusing him of collecting money to do something like that, I mean, what should we do? Should the special prosecutor investigate the AG? Should the AG do a press conference to explain? Should the president call him? How do we get clarity on this matter?
No, thank you very much. And actually, I think the key word you used is very untidy and really raises a lot of concern. So as far as I understand the allegation, as you said, the main allegation that was made was that he had taken some money from some sort of a financier, political financier, or a donation, or at least first he said he had taken some money. And then the AG explained that this was a donation for his campaign, right? So this is an individual. And the reason why this is important is because the individual is basically, well, we don't know officially if he's a suspect, but certainly being he's involved in transactions that are being investigated. This under the Mineral Income Investment Fund, right? So the suggestion that was initially made was that this money that was taken was basically to prevent the AG from going forward and investigating this person who had basically given him money to stop any further investigation into him. But the AG then explained that he did receive donation for his campaign from this individual, and many other MPs did receive. So that's what we know currently. Later on, the A+ or the honorable member has retracted certain things. I don't know which part of it is retracted and so on. But you make an important point about where the position of the AG now in terms of leading, the accountability process and accusations like this being made against him. At the moment, he is fighting it directly by challenging the MP to provide evidence of his of whatever he's claiming, and also suggested that the MP may be involved in one of the ongoing cases, which is the National Service Secretariat investigation. So that when you say it's untidy, that's where all the problem comes. And I agree with you that it does require for somebody else, whether Shraj or somebody else, to take up this matter. The AG himself can refer the matter to Shraj. The AG can refer the matter to the OSP, for investigation, so that the matter is cleared, right? The OSP has some limitations in terms of what corruption issues that he can address, because if you read the interpretation section of the OSP Act, the corruption-related offenses are very limited. They are limited to certain offenses, criminal offenses, under the Criminal Offences Act, and then public procurement and related matters. So that's why the OSP has been talking about reform and review of the Act itself, because there are limitations to what he can investigate. But Shraj, on the other hand, he can refer as long as there's a complainant. And in the past, President Akufo-Addo referred the ABAJ case, the public procurement case, to Shraj, for example, for investigation. So that's also feasible. But I agree with you that you need somebody external to you, particularly if you are the person being accused, to investigate the matter and bring some clarity, to the process. But one of the things that's happening, and this is an MP accusing another MP, and this has been going on in the public media for a long time. I know Parliament is on recess, but it is important that the Speaker, because there's the disciplinary committee, if an MP complains about another MP, it goes to the disciplinary committee. If none of them are referring the matter to Parliament, then the Speaker must step in, to require that either a committee investigate it and so on and so forth. So in either way, I think it is in the AG's interest to basically ask for, complain to another agency of government or the state to investigate this matter and bring closure to it, so that whatever is left of the so-called allegations and so on and so forth is dealt with. If at the end the honorable member is wrong, then whatever I think he's apologized in some ways or not. There may be a formal apology is required, and or Parliament sanctions. I don't know, but I think to make it clear and help the AGs sort of moral authority to be strengthened, then it's better to clean up this process. The matter that you have raised, which is for me the big issue, is the conflict of interest, the campaign financing matter. And that is one reform that we have to address because it's the source of a lot of our problems that creates conflict of interest situations. So going forward, for instance, is the reason why when the AG exercises powers of not to prosecute or not to prosecute, people said, no, we have to have certain guidelines as to why and when you exercise this so that it helps us to be able to know whether or not at any point in time you are acting in the public interest and not in the private interest. And these kinds of scenarios raises those questions because now you are investigating this person or transactions around this that involves this person who they are giving you a campaign donation. How do we ensure that at all times you act in our interest? We know your integrity, we can rely on your integrity, but that is never enough in the public service. And we need to have safeguards around it. The same thing, how do we ensure that if the Member of Parliament is involved in the National Service Secretariat matter, that you pursue the law to its end and that there is no deal in the back end for that person, to be removed from the process. So these kinds of transparency issues are very important in terms of how the AG exercises its powers to investigate, its powers to prosecute, its powers not to prosecute. So there are all these things that even as this matter is being investigated, how the AG carries on with the investigations that he has mentioned involving these persons where there might be a conflict of interest situation, he would have to make sure that there are clear transparency provisions that ensures that the public interest is served at all times.
We'll leave it here, Kojo, and hopefully continue tomorrow when we look at the 120 days of Mahama, and hopefully you join us to discuss that when we do it. So I thank you so much, Kojo Pumpuni Asante, who is the Director of Policy and Programs at CDD. It's been a lot. We've been chewing on the number of things that have happened in the past couple of days. President's Code of Conduct he launched for his appointees, asset declaration, and the fact that tomorrow is the deadline. And by the way, Sky will take us through the list of people who have to declare the assets. The list is so long, it may even include you. So let's take a break when we get into that as well, plus your messages. Saying that sticking to the law, the people who haven't declared the assets should actually have been sacked.
Yes,
because they shouldn't have even taken up the position.
No, because the condition is a condition precedent for entering the office. The Article 286 says that before assumption of office or where you leave office, you have to make a declaration which is consistent or which may be a departure from what you had declared previously.
Yeah.
Because maybe during the course of your days in office, you would have acquired property and all of that. Or after 4 years, right? In cases of people who occupy office for 4 years. That's the requirement. The mistake Parliament made was that in putting together the statute, they inserted a provision that says that you can do that up to 6 months. So you have a 6-month sort of grace period to do it.
All right.
I believe that provision is unconstitutional because the language of the Constitution is clear.
Who made that provision?
Parliament.
Is it through an act?
Yes, through an act of Parliament.
Okay.
So it is sort of the implementing act.
As in, they give 6 months grace period after you have been appointed.
Yeah, that's right.
To then declare it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which category of people are to declare their assets? I'm very interested in that. Who's supposed to? Because it looks like God first has to declare.
No. It's
from the way it's looking.
Long
the long list there.
Yeah, so you
declare the chicken.
No, the chicken. Not easy. So who's supposed to?
So you have the President of the Republic, the Vice President of the Republic, the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, Deputy Speakers, and a Member of Parliament.
So all MPs are
right.
to declare their assets.
Yeah, the Chief Justice, Justice of the Superior Court of Judicature, Chairman of a Regional Tribunal, and Commissioner for Human Rights.
Who is a Justice of Superior Court? Is that from High Court up?
Yes, so from the High Court.
From the High Court upwards.
Yeah, that's right. Justices of the Superior Court, they have to declare.
Wow.
Yeah, the Chief Justice included.
So High Court and then all the others. And then you also mentioned other things there.
Chairman of a regional tribunal. We no longer use these ones, but the president's, the NDC says they want to bring it back.
So Chairman of Regional Tribunal.
Exactly. The Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice and his deputies and all judicial officers. So if you are a judicial officer, you are required.
So it's a circuit court judge required.
I have to look at that.
Who is a judicial officer?
Well, so you have registrars who are within the space. You have all these other people who help the justice system.
I'm wondering because a circuit court judge may be constituted as a judicial officer.
Yeah, I have to look.
Or unless they work, you're talking about those who work for the judicial service.
I have to look at the.
So check that. Continue. Who else?
Then you have ambassador or high commissioner.
Hey.
So you also have to declare. Then you have secretary to the cabinet.
Secretary to the cabinet, obviously, yes.
Then you have head of ministry or government department or equivalent office in the civil service.
So chief directors.
Yes, those top level positions.
And then head of department.
Department. So all these government departments that are the department of this, department of that.
Department of Parks and Gardens.
Yeah, that's right. You need to.
Then it means government authorities too. Urban roads.
All those institutions you have to declare. Then you have chairman, managing director, general manager, and departmental head of a public corporation or company in which the state has a controlling interest. So
chairman, managing director, general manager, or
departmental head.
Yeah. So let's assume you are the head of maybe NHI.
Yes, you have to.
You are the head, even head of the procurement department.
Yes, you have to.
Are you serious?
There's a lot of money that goes through that institution, and if you are
head of communication at Ghana Gas,
declare.
Once it's a department,
yes, if the head of
a government agency that government has controlling stake,
then you have to declare.
Then the Auditor General has a lot of information.
Exactly. Then you have the governor, Bank of Ghana, and his deputies, chairman, Electoral Commission and the deputies, chairman, National Commission for Civic Education and the deputies, head of Chancery of Ghana Embassy, of Ghana High Commission, heads of departments of the Bank of Ghana. So all the departments within the Bank of Ghana, the people heading those would also have to declare. Officers in the Ghana Armed Forces, seconded to civilian establishment and institutions. So members of the tender boards of the central, regional, and district assemblies. So those are tender, the ones who are responsible for making all kinds of procurements and related matters. Officials of vehicle examination and licensing division, not below the rank of vehicle examiner.
DVLA people.
Yeah, the DVLA people.
We don't want them to acquire cars in the process of licensing our cars. So declare your asset before you take the work.
Exactly. Officer of the rank of Assistant Inspector of Taxes and above in the Ghana Revenue Authority or its equivalent.
GRA.
Yeah, in the offices of the police service.
Are you sure these people declare their assets?
No. Well, it's difficult. I mean, you have to write to the Auditor General to produce the list of people who have. The prison service, the district chief executive, presiding member and secretary of metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies, chairman, public services commission and his deputies. And then the head of civil service must declare. And then persons who are heads of or accountants in, internal auditors in, procurement officers in, and planning and budget officer in finance and procurement departments of government ministries, departments and agencies, district, municipal and metropolitan assemblies, or an officer in any other public office or public institution other than the armed forces, the salary attached to which is equivalent to or above the salary of a director in a civil service.
Sky, if we list these people, there will be over 10,000.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people, though.
A lot of people.
Because if you look at the states, we have this list of 175 government entities.
Yeah.
And the thing you've read, probably about 10 people per organization.
Because Parliament alone, you have 275.
Yeah.
Then you add a speaker to it.
But why wouldn't they make us know what is in the asset declaration? I do get the view you take that if, for example, and I don't want to prejudice the matter, so I won't mention it, but it's like a public officer after he leaves office is accused of using state funds for private use. I believe that if, for example, he's bought a house and they claim that this house, he used state funds to buy it. If you go into his asset declaration and he actually possessed that house and he declared that this was his house, I think that helps. So there's a certain wisdom in the asset declaration when you take office. But why do you think they don't want us to know what is inside?
Well, you see, I think there are privacy issues too at play. The fact that you have become a public officer should not, without more, mean that you have lost your right to privacy. You know, you may have 10 houses, but you do not want anybody to know about it. Or maybe your dad died and bequeathed, you know, about 5 different properties to you, and you don't want anybody to know about it. But the moment you become a public officer, the law is requiring that you should make that public.
So not everybody, but so let me give an example. A friend of mine says, Bernard, a retired judge mentioned to me that his colleague decided to test the process by placing a blank A4 sheet in the envelope and submitting as his asset declaration. And it was received and a receipt given to him. Since then, since no one opens the envelope to check what's in.
But you see, there's a problem with that.
Can there not be an oath of secrecy to say, you see, because Sky, for me, if you
so
can't verify the thing.
No, so false declarations are an offense under the law.
But how do you declare it's false if you won't open it? How do you know it's false if you won't open it?
You see, for now, we wouldn't know because the law says that it is kept until an issue arises. So the court wants that document to test whether, okay, you acquired this property during the pendency of your days in office, or before you came into office, or after you left office. Then the document is brought. It is opened in court, and then we interrogate it. And the facts
the law is defective.
Yeah,
extremely defective.
I find that
it is very defective and inadequate.
You know, at least there should be some official to check.
You see, because the law has certain purposes: transparency and accountability, combating corruption, preventing conflict of interest, promoting good governance. Now, I just want to highlight
the right to privacy.
No, monitoring and verification.
That can override the things he read.
You see, transparency and accountability.
Correct.
Combating corruption.
100%.
Preventing conflict of interest.
Correct.
So if I am a chair, a CEO, or whatever of a government agency, and I am involved in a process that is clearly a conflict of interest, who knows?
That is why the law imposes you, the person who is involved in that situation, to declare that conflict.
No,
and I am conflicted by reason of my ownership.
But that presumes
we cannot depend on your
moral sense,
your sense of goodness. So my argument is that it is not for nothing that public officers swear certain oaths. I think there are certain categories of public officers like judges and heads of some institutions who should be able to verify that this is what you have put in the envelope.
That'll be a difficult task.
No,
it must be done.
Sky, for example, you should be able to have a category, maybe some judges or somebody. Because you cannot just declare something and keep it under lock and key that there's no recourse for. It's marks of I want a word like what do you call it, elite people wanting to not. I mean, Sky, if you want to serve in the public office, there are certain things that can no longer be private.
There are certain things, but not everything.
But do you know that as we sit here, we know what the US president's assets are. When Obama,
the law says directly or indirectly.
Sky, didn't we know Obama's net worth throughout his presidency, from the time he became president all through to the end? We all knew, and I'm not even an American.
He left richer than he came
because of Obama's. We knew he had what. It was very clear, because you see, once we don't know what a person has, how can we then tell whether whilst he's in office he's looting state funds or not?
Yeah, because you see, the general superstructure on which we have to build a system like that, we don't even have it.
Which is,
do we even know, you sitting there, do you know what this person or that person has?
No.
You can sometimes speculate that, this thing, it'd be like he owns it. But in reality, he may be an alter ego for somebody. Or that the said thing.
But we also have the beneficiary ownership one that can deal with those.
Yeah, those ones.
So what I'm saying is that, Sky, you have said Parliament Act that allows for people to assume office without declaring their act is defective, and I agree with you, because I can take over office and in 6 months do many things to hide what I have. So you believe that the law contemplates, at least the Constitution contemplates, declaring before assumption of office.
So we know what you have.
Good. In addition to that, we also say that declaring the asset and keeping it under lock and key without anybody knowing what it is also not enough. So once you are calling for the strict adherence to the Constitution, of course, you want to see constitutional review system. Maybe you should present a paper on why the asset declaration regime needs to be fine-tuned to include the repealing of that constitutional that act that sort of gives them the 6-month leeway, and also to open it up for certain categories. I'm not saying let's make it a morning show discussion. I don't need to know what everybody, do you understand? But you cannot keep something under lock and key without any recourse to another person checking what is in there.
You see, what should the person check?
We should discuss it.
No,
we should discuss it.
Here's the thing.
We should discuss it.
So that if I claim that I have a house in Nogopo,
Sky,
you want to, the person should go.
Don't forget that we are also talking about lifestyle audits. So let's assume I, as a journalist, have been given a post as a communication something for the government. I did journalism for 20 years. Maybe the level of tax I paid was 10,000 cedis. I want to take over public office. There are certain things that they need to check whether I'm even a man of integrity. So with all the assets I claim I have, does the tax I pay commensurate to those things I claim I have? Do you understand me? Yeah. So somebody should be able to check that GRA should say, Aloski, you said you have done journalism for 20 years and you have 6 houses in Accra. And now you're coming to take over Minister of Communication. No, we have to be sure. And you see, if we don't raise the standard for public office, then anybody can do anything.
And you see, Sky, I think that we need, I am completely 100% with Bernard on this. We need to raise the threshold for this. We need to make it very difficult. And we need to also make it easy to make those comparisons.
Yeah.
The institutions and the framework must be put in place. You see, other than that, what we have is basically a process that serves no purpose. It is not useful.
Yep.
No.
Now, hold on for me, I beg you. Okay. Yes, I want to wrap.
Yes.
Just give it 2 minutes. It is not useful. And it is the reason why we have so much unexplained wealth, particularly amongst public officers.
Correct.
And then we, the citizens, end up declaring outreach. Now, sometimes, most of the time, legally, you might not be able to prove it. But even us as journalists, look, there are times when somebody sees you and says, hey, now journalists will car driving. Why do you think the person says that? Because the person is hazarding that a journalist, on the average in Ghana, might earn ABCD. So he looks at this journalist and says, how are you able to afford this? Are you doing ABCD? And this happens all the time. I am sure you have even faced it. That somebody meets you and says, hey, Richard Sky, is this your car? I have faced it. Somebody meets me and says, hey, Governor Kotobuafu, is this your car?
When he sleeps, I'm working.
It does not matter. But the person has a certain perception about what the average person in a certain category earns.
Okay.
So if a person is a public officer and I know that the person earns X amount of money, and every 3 weeks I see this person in Aston Martin, he drives a Lamborghini, he does ABCD, and the person has declared that he owns one Toyota Corolla in some envelope somewhere, but there is no way of the system at any point in time cross-checking within that period that how is the Toyota Corolla owner suddenly owning a Lamborghini and an Aston Martin. The system is defective.
It's okay.
But just 1 minute, I beg you. You see, that is why when an issue like that arises, the law says go to Shraj and file a complaint.
No problem.
Shraj will cause an investigation to be made. And if there is a discrepancy and you can't explain the basis for transitioning from Corolla to Lamborghini, then an issue arises.
Okay.
How did you finance it? You understand? So it is just because we have failed repeatedly as a people to make the law work.
All right.
There is a way to make it work. We have refused to make it work.
We'll see how that works.